Hello, everyone. My name is Mike, and I'm with the North Bay Science Discovery Day. And I'm glad you're joining us today to learn about bats. Before we begin, though, a couple of rules. First of all, please only have your first name showing rather than your first and last. Just your first name, please. Keep your video off unless Corky says she would like to have the video on. We are going to record this though. So if you do not want to be recorded, or if your parents don't want you to be recorded, keep your video off. Please also stay muted unless Corky says she wants you to speak up whenever you want. If you have questions, Corky will tell you whether she wants you just to shout out or whether she wants you to use the chat. If there are too many people trying to speak at one time, though, we'll have to say just use the chat, and we'll get to the chat questions as quickly as we can. And if you're on your video and you have a question, you want to raise your hand, Corky can call on you, or we'll just say, Corky, you tell us if you want everybody to use chat or to raise hands. With that, I'll turn it over to Corky to share with us about bats.
All right. So if you're going to go ahead and spotlight myself, if you stay in speaker view, you should see me big on your screen. And that way you'll also be able to see the live bats because that's kind of cool, right? So thank you, Mike, for the introduction. Welcome. So excited to be here to share with you. My name is Corky. I'm with Northern California Bats, and we do wildlife rescue. So that means if you find a wild animal that is injured or sick or a baby that doesn't have a mom anymore, and you want to get help for it, it would come to a person like me. And I specialize in bats. So if it's a bat, might come to me. And we would try to help it to get better and go back out into the wild so it could live there. I do have some bats that we were not able to help enough. And those are the bats you're going to be meeting today. These are bats that came into rescue with a broken wing that we couldn't fix. And so none of these three can fly anymore. And I do want to show you them. So I'm going to put them up on the spotlight. They're there. They're in a show box. So I'm going to back up my camera a little bit here so you can see. See, they're sitting in a box. Actually, they're sleeping in the box. Not only are they asleep because it's the middle of the day, but they're asleep because they just like to sleep. I have three different kinds, and these are all bats that are found in the Bay Area. All three could be found near where you live if you live in Northern California. This one here, and you can see how big she is by the size of my pencil. She is a big bat for California. She is called a pallid bat. This one in the middle is a big brown bat. And then this one here on the side that's a little bit smaller is called a Mexican free-tailed bat. And the way I work this is I'm going to be showing you some pictures and little short videos about bats. And then I'm going to take out one of each bat, one by one, and I'm going to use a little camera so that I could make the bat look a little bit bigger and you'll be able to see it better on your screen. Absolutely, they are small. I do appreciate the use of chat. I am going to ask Mike to also keep an eye on it. While I'm doing my PowerPoint, I don't usually answer chat questions unless I see one that happens to fit with what I'm already talking about. But you might want to put in because you know the answer to something, and that's fine. After the PowerPoint, when I'm bringing out the live bats, that's going to be the best time. And so if you put your question in chat, then I'll say, hey, Mike, are there any questions? And he can ask them in order. If you don't know how to use chat, then maybe you know how to use the raise your hand feature. And that will also help us to know that you have something you want to say, and then Mike can invite you to unmute yourself to do that. Now, I did see another one come in, and that question was, do they have names? I actually don't give them pet names because it's important to me that people remember that the bats are wild animals. They're wildlife. They're not pets, and you can't make a wild animal into a pet. And because they're small and they're furry, when you give them a name, people kind of begin to think of them as pets. And I don't want that to happen. I want people to remember what kind of bat they are, or that they are a bat that lives in California, but I don't want them to think of them as a pet. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And there we are. So again, I am with Northern California Bats. We're based out of the Sacramento Valley, although we do education programs all over Northern California. And actually, with Zoom, I've been doing them in other states too, which is kind of fun. Anyway, I do, before I begin talking about bats, want to talk a little bit about why we're doing all of this virtual stuff, right? And you might have heard somewhere that, well, you're going to get COVID-19 from a bat, or bats, they're the cause of this. Well, let's kind of think about that. First of all, mammals and birds. So bats are mammals, humans are mammals, right? And birds have coronaviruses. And there's lots of types of coronaviruses out there. Most don't move from an animal to a person. Scientists are still trying to figure out how and where this particular type of virus came from and how it entered the human population. Now, we do know that there is a virus that is found in a type of a bat, a horseshoe bat in China, not here, that is similar. It's not the same, but it is similar to to the virus causing COVID-19. However, this virus ended up with people. Whether it first was a virus found in a bat and then that virus changed, maybe it moved through another animal, or maybe it came from another animal, not a bat, we don't know. But what we do know is it's because of our behavior that we now have to deal with this virus. The wild pet trait, right? Collecting animals out of the wild, capturing them and selling them as pets, putting them in confined areas and mixing them up with species that they never would have mixed with in the wild. So that would be, again, it could be the pet trait. It also could be some of the food markets that exist around the world where the animals are live in those markets. Very stressful situation, and the animals are more likely to be sick. Habitat destruction also causes these animals to mix because they're looking for a place to be. No matter where this came from, it's because of us. And then we jump on an airplane and we travel around the world, right? We also know you cannot get COVID-19 from a bat, even if the bat did have a similar virus. It cannot jump from a bat to a human. So that's good, right? So no reason to be worried about the bats. Okay, enough about that. Let's talk about bats. So we're going to compare ourselves to this bat. This bat is a mammal. And as mammals, we know mammals have what? Hair, right?
Fur.
Mammal babies drink milk, right? They do not lay eggs, but bats can fly. All mammals that fly are called bats, and they fly with their hands, and they have the same bones we do. So look at your hand and find your thumb. Bat has a thumb, right? So if you kind of stick out your thumb, and then we're going to add some fingers. Okay, bat has 1, 2, right next to each other, 3, 4. 4 fingers plus a thumb equals 5 on each side. And then the skin goes from the pinky finger all the way to the ankle. And when a bat flies, it doesn't flap like a bird. It moves its arms much like we would swim the butterfly stroke. So if you move your arms like swimming, both at the same time, that's more how a bat can fly. So this happens to be a bat from the continent of Africa. It's a type of a flying fox. And you can watch how it moves. It even can bend its knuckles. And you can bend your knuckles too, right? And that helps the bat change the shape of its wing. This is our pallid bat. And again, arm, elbow, wrist, thumb, 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers from the end of the pinky to the ankle. Now, I got somebody off of mute. Please keep yourself on mute so you're not bothering other people. Thank you. So around the world, there's lots of different kinds of bats. There's not actually a ton of different kinds of mammals, 6,300. And of those, look at it, all these different kinds are some kind of a rodent. Lots of different kinds of rodents in the world, right? The squirrels, the rats, the beavers, all kinds of them. But the next big group are the bats. And as of January, 1,430 different types. In the US, we have 47 kinds, 25 in California, and 17 in Northern California. And a good dozen that could be around you in your neighborhoods. Most bats, no matter where they live, most bats eat insects and nothing else. Bats eat bugs.
Bats eat bugs.
They don't eat people.
Bats eat bugs.
They don't fly in your hair.
Bats eat bugs.
They eat insects for dinner.
That's why we're flying a bar.
And this is one way they can capture an insect while they're flying. So watch how they use their hand, grab it with their hand wing, push it into that tail membrane, and scoop it right back out. So
We have a question about fruit-eating bats.
yeah, so there are bats in the world that eat fruit, but they don't live in the United States unless they're at a zoo. Just like there are elephants in Africa and Asia in the wild, but if you want to see one in the United States, you have to go to a zoo because they don't live in the wild here. Same thing for the fruit bats. They don't live here. And of the 1,400 species of bats, around 300 or so, maybe 350, eat fruit. Many of the fruit-eating bats eat insects also. So they kind of double dip. But there are some, the flying foxes, that are vegetarians.
We also have a question about bats that feed on blood.
The vampire bat lives in Central and South America. So again, not here. And they, they are absolutely a fascinating animal. Vampire bats are real. They generally are not interested in people. Usually they're going for larger mammals that are out in the open, right? So cows and horses, pigs, sheep, because we've brought a lot of farms into the tropical areas. Historically, before people had farms, then they would have been looking for, a sloth or maybe one of the tapir or other animals that would have lived in the tropics. Because that's what they are. They're tropical animals. 3 kinds of vampire bats. 2 of them mainly take blood from birds. parrots, macaws, things like that. Chickens, not usually people. Now, maybe you're further blind. They're not blind. They can see. Most bats don't see color. Fruit bats see color. They have to, because they have to know when the fruit's ripe, right? But most bats, they're not eating fruit. Most of them are eating insects, and they need to have better vision at night. And to do that, they give up the ability to see color so that they can get more light into their eyes. And so they see in black and white like this cartoon, but they absolutely can see. But they are hunting when it's dark, and that's hard. And I bet you know what else they use. Echolocation. Now, interestingly, fruit bats, true fruit bats, the flying foxes, they don't echolocate, at least not to find food. Some of them echolocate to like maneuver around in a cave, but most of them don't even do that. But the insect-eating bats and the frog-eating bats and the fishing bats and the vampire bats and all those other guys, they use echolocation. And echolocation are simply pulses of sound. Bing, bing, bing. And when that sound returns, they go, oh, something's there. And then they go faster. Bing, 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 bing. And each little bounce starts to give them a better idea. And then they go super fast. Bing, 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 bing. And that last little part, that's when they decide if they want to eat it or not. So listen for the, we call that the feeding buzz. The feeding buzz. Now I have a little song about echolocation. It's a pretty cute little song. It doesn't transfer super well on Zoom, but I think it's worth it. The volume will be good. The song will be good. Just that you might see the pictures jump a little bit. Here we go.
Echolocation. I find my prey, I find my way. Echolocation. I'm a little brown bat, hungry for a midnight snack. The sound wave blast I release to find food fast. Bionic ears, ultrasonic frequencies I can hear. I sleep all day, upside down in my cave. I fly by night, don't need light, eat meals in flight. Echo, 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 echolocation. I find my prey, I find my way. Echolocation. I squeal like that, hits an insect, bounces back. Sound reflections will determine my direction. Echo, 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 echolocation. I find my prey, I find my way. Echolocation. Echo, 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 echolocation. I find my prey, I find my way. Echolocation.
Fun stuff. So that little bat, right over the top of water, that's why there's a reflection. Mouth open, wings open, tail membrane spread, echolocating. Maybe it's looking for a mosquito, right? So I told you at the beginning that I do wildlife rescue. I'm taking in bats that people find on the ground, which means they could have an issue. Usually bats aren't on the ground. They can be. I mean, sometimes that happens. But generally, there's usually something wrong. It could be sick. It could be hurt. And in the summertime, it could be a baby that lost its mom. And it's important to remember bats are wild animals. And if any wild animal isn't behaving in a way that you expect, there's probably something wrong and you shouldn't handle it. So we ask, please, that you do not touch the bat, but that you do, if you're a kid, get an adult, and then remind the adult not to handle it bare-skinned. If they need to move the bat, they can put on gloves, or they can use a tool like a stick or a dustpan and a box, right? Contain it, call wildlife rescue. You'll get somebody like me, and we'll try to figure out how to get help for the bat. Again, I'm with Northern California Bats. This is my website. I have a bunch of information on there about bats and about building bat houses, if that's something you're interested in doing, about other programs that we do, or maybe you want to invite me to your school. So
Corky, you mentioned bat houses, and somebody asked about, do bats only live in caves? So where do bats live?
yeah, so interestingly, let me first stop share. There we go. They live in lots of different kinds of places. Remember, I told you there's a bunch of different kinds of bats. So let's think about just the bats in the Bay Area. We have bats that would live in some of the old mines and caves that would be in the kind of like the Coast Range in the area nearby. We have bats that live in rock outcroppings or big piles of rocks. We have bats that live under bark of trees or in holes in trees. We have bats that would hang in a tree like a piece of fruit and not even bother hiding. And many of those bats have also figured out people. So they'll live in bridges, they'll live under the eaves of people's houses. Some of them like to go in front entryways, like right over the front door where it almost looks like a cave. Lots of different places they might live. All right, I'm going to be taking out the bats now, one at a time. I am going to use my little camera, and I am going to put on my gloves because, I know these bats are healthy. They've lived with me a long time. There's no way they're sick with rabies. If a bat gets sick with rabies, it'll die in a pretty short amount of time. So I know they're not sick, but they still have teeth and it can hurt. I don't like to get hurt. So I'm going to put on my gloves. While I'm putting on my gloves and taking out the first bat, are there more questions there, Mike?
No, there aren't any questions showing right now.
Oh, okay then. I'm going to start with the Mexican free-tailed bat. It is a fairly small bat, but it's actually considered medium. The Yola Wildlife Area. That's actually where I am right now. I'm borrowing their building because their internet's better than mine at home. There are bats that live there year-round, but they're most active in the summertime. So I didn't switch. Oh, wrong button.
We have a question from Alex.
Yeah, so
Oh,
we start
sorry,
the tours
Alex,
out. Wait a minute, Alex. We start the tours out at the Yola Wildlife Area in June because that's when the bulk of the bats are there. See my hand? That's where I'm going to put the bat. Okay, Alex, go for it.
I was just gonna say, could you spotlight the bats, but you did it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So let me get out that little Mexican free-tail. And there we go. He is about the size of my thumb. So he's a pretty small bat. There he is. Here's my thumb. I don't know how long he'll sit there. So I'll put my thumb back on top of him. You can see he has round ears. Most of our bats have little pointy ears, but the Mexican free-tail bat's ears are more round, almost mouse-like. Sometimes people think they're related to mice, but they're actually not. They're closer to a cat. So I like to call them itty-bitty flying kitties. And
there's a question about when do Mexican free-tails come to Yola Wildlife Area?
Yeah, so that's I was talking about that right before Alex, and they're here, but they're not flying much until the weather is warmer. So really, my very favorite time to come out to watch the bats at YOLO is July and August when it's really hot, because that's when they're the best shows.
And then there's a question about what and how do you feed them?
So when they live in captivity, I feed them mealworms, and I'll show you that when I bring out the big brown bat because she's a better eater. The Mexican free-tail here in my hand, he likes to crawl in the bowl and eat when he decides he wants to. And I can't count on him to eat in front of the camera. But the big brown, she just loves to eat no matter what. In the wild, the Mexican free-tailed bat would mostly eat the moth and the mosquito. Moth and mosquito. So really, really important to the farmers because moth caterpillars eat our crops. So they're protecting the corn and tomatoes, and there's a lot of the moth caterpillars that eat nuts and fruit and all kinds of stuff. Rice. There's moth caterpillar that eats the rice plants, just all kinds of stuff. So these guys are super important for the farmers. You can see the thumbs. We talked about the thumbs, right? And if this is the thumb, then the wing would be over on the side. Let's see if he'll let me show you his wing. So there, oops, he says, I'm done with that. One more time. We didn't get to look at it very long. So there's his wing. You can see the thumb sticking up, the finger bones, all that skin, right? And then if I let go, whoop, he was caught by a cat. So CJ's asking what makes him unable to fly. And the cat played with him and broke the fingers right at the wrist. And because it was so close to the wrist, the veterinarian was not able to repair it well enough. So he doesn't use that wing anymore. And he can move it around enough to clean it and stuff, but he can't fly with it. I know there were some others that popped up, but I missed them. Want to see his teeth? There's his little teeth. Right. Oh, where are you going? He says, enough of that. No more teeth. So little teeth that are kind of like the teeth of a cat. And then let's see the tail. So here is his tail. They have about 30 teeth.
As long as we're on the tail end, there's a question about what do you do with bat pellets? I presume they're talking about droppings.
I put them in my garden because they are very high in nitrogen, which means they're excellent fertilizer. And I have some really nice, healthy, dark green vegetables in the summer. So most of our bats, the skin goes from the ankle to the tip of the tail and back around to the other ankle to make that big catcher's mitt like we saw when the bat was flying and catching the moth. But the free-tailed bat, it can scoot that tail up and down, or it can scoot that skin up and down the tail. So it can scoot it out or scoot it back. And that is an adaptation for speed. These are super fast flyers. And look at his little hairy toes. Little hairy toes. Those little hairy toes are, the hairs are like whiskers. So just like a cat uses whiskers for feeling, this bat uses whiskers for feeling. The Mexican free-tailed bat is the fastest bat on Earth. It also is the fastest mammal. Yes, it's faster than a cheetah. Cheetahs are fast. Cheetahs could go maybe 60 to 70 miles an hour for a brief amount of time. This bat, well, its species, can go almost 100 miles an hour. That makes them way faster than a cheetah. Now, sometimes people say, okay, well, what about a peregrine falcon? So, well, you know what? Peregrine falcons are not mammals. This bat is the fastest mammal, but not the fastest animal. That said, peregrine falcon is super fast in a stoop or a dive, right? But straight flight, level flight, this bat would win. So when a peregrine falcon wants to hunt Mexican free-tailed bats in the air, and they do, they fly up above the colony and then they drop down right into amongst the bats and grab one with their talons. Pretty amazing. We get to see that sometimes. You know, it's one of those where you go, oh, poor bat. Wow, that was so cool, though. That peregrine falcon is amazing, right? All right, so that's our Mexican free-tailed bat. Any more questions about the bat, Mike?
Not seeing any.
Okay, I'm going to take out the big brown bat.
Big brown bat.
Big brown
Sorry, I
bat.
missed a couple people raising their hands.
Okay, go ahead.
Mark has one. Mark, go ahead and ask if you can unmute.
Maybe we should come back to him when he figures it out.
Okay, and Veda? Can you unmute or can you type it into the chat box?
So I searched up what's the fastest bat on Earth, and it says that the Brazilian free-tailed bat is the fastest one.
Yep. So the Mexican free-tailed bat is a subspecies of the Brazilian. So our bat, its science name is Tadarda brasilianus mexicana. So we have the Mexican free-tailed bat, but it is the same species as the Brazilian. They're the same thing. It's just where they live.
Mark, it looks like you're unmuted for a moment, but now you're muted again.
Not so sure. There he comes.
Okay, Mark, what's your question? Go ahead, Mark. Can't hear you, Mark. Speak up.
I think he's being shy.
Okay, well, maybe your mom or dad can help you out, Mark.
Okay, so I got a question here. Why is she trembling? She's vibrating. Big brown bats are really good sleepers. And when they sleep, they drop their blood pressure and they drop their pulse rate and they sleep. But when it's time to wake up, they shake. So she's shaking because she's trying to wake up. She's not cold. She's not scared. She's just not fully alert yet.
There's a question about how do they use their whiskers? And also, I'm seeing the fur and it looks pretty soft, is it?
So the whiskers, I'm assuming you mean the Mexican free-tailed bat's toe whiskers, and they're not used for finding prey. They're used for sensing like where they are in the cave when they're climbing and crawling, or where they are if they're hiding in a crack. And they also can use it to feel which way the wind is blowing. So they can use the wind to help them. And yes, the fur is very soft. And the big brown bat is much furrier than the Mexican free-tailed bat. Aren't ya? She also has much bigger teeth. You can really see those teeth, right? Come on. Yeah. She's like, okay, I'm almost awake. I'm getting closer. Those big, thick teeth are used for chewing up beetles.
The question.
What's the question?
Is Mark ready for asking his question? Mom, you want to help him?
Sure. What's the
You
question?
can either ask the question for Mark or type it into chat and we'll get to it from chat.
Sure.
Okay, so the big brown bat has these big teeth so they can crunch up beetles. And beetles, well, there are certainly good beetles, but there's also beetles that are a problem for people. Big brown bat will eat termites too. It'll eat moth. It'll eat mosquitoes. It eats all kinds of things. And she's now shaking so much that I'm having a hard time keeping her focus. Okay, come back here. Oh, there's her nice big wings. Where are you going? Okay. She also was caught by a cat. And here, you want this mealworm? Will that help you focus? There she goes. She's like, oh, that's yummy stuff. Really good stuff. All right. Yum, 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 yum. She'll eat about 15 of these easily. Why do bats need humans to feed them? Well, they don't normally, but she got hurt by a cat. And so she can't fly anymore. And because she can't fly, she can't find her own food. She doesn't have to have me feed her. She knows how to crawl into the bowl and eat as many mealworms as she wants. And she usually does. That's usually exactly what she does.
Ellie, do you
It's
want to
kind of fun to watch
unmute
her.
yourself and ask your question?
Say it again.
Ellie has a question.
How can you tell a female from a male or a male from a female?
Yeah, so the only way is just like a dog or a cat. You have to be able to look underneath their tail and see if they have girl parts or boy parts. Their fur is the same color and they're really very close in size. So you can't really tell by which one's bigger. So when they're out there flying around, I can't tell if it's a girl or a boy, only if I have one in my hand. Now remember the free tail. Let's see if the big brown bat has a free tail. Oop, turn around. She's like, I don't want to turn around. I want to go the other way. No, 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 no. Come on. There's her tail. No free. Lots and lots of skin. Big, big catcher's mitt. No free tail. I think I saw some others fly by, but I missed them.
There's another question about why do bats come out at night?
So a long time ago, when mammals were evolving on the planet, there were insects in the day and there were insects in the night. There were animals that ate the insects in the day, but there were not many flying animals that ate insects at night. So it was an open niche and that the insects were available. And it's dark at night, so it's much harder for a predator to catch them when they're out there flying. In the day, sometimes a bird can catch a bat in the air, but at night, once it's dark, they're pretty safe. Any more?
I see something that says Neil's raising his hand. So Neil, if you can unmute your computer, we'll take your question.
You're unmuted.
Can a cat catch a vampire bat?
I suppose a cat probably could if it lived in South America. Vampire bats aren't super fast.
How fast do bat hearts beat? And do owls ever feed on bats?
So as far as heart rate, it depends if the bat's flying or just hanging out awake or sleeping or at in the winter if they're hibernating. In the winter when they're hibernating, it hardly beats at all. It beats, but hardly at all. But if they're flying, it's super fast like the hummingbird.
Owls? Do
Oh,
owls
owls.
hunt bats?
Owls, in the United States, we don't have any owls that are fast enough to catch a flying bat. But if a bat ends up on the ground, before it gets back up in the air, an owl might be able to catch it. So I do see sometimes owls hanging around a roost, you know, like a cave, because if bats fly out, if one bumps another one, maybe that one will fall. And before it gets a chance to climb back up, the owl might be able to get it.
Why do they sleep upside down?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. For several reasons. They sleep upside down because, you know, if you're little and you're hiding in a crack or a cave or, a little crevice or something. If you go in head first, you can't see. But if you hang by your feet, you can look around, and so you can still watch for predators. It also puts them in position to be able to drop to fly. So all they got to do is let go with their toes and they can drop and take off. And that's way more efficient than trying to jump and take off. And they can do those things because the tendons in their feet are made so that their toes stay hooked when they're relaxed. So if you think of yourself and you're like hanging on the monkey bars, if you hang on the monkey bars by your hands and you fell asleep, you'd let go and you'd fall to the ground. But if you were a bat and you were hanging on the monkey bars and you fell asleep, your feet wouldn't let go and you'd be able to stay. All right, I'm going to take out the pallid bat now. And that's the third bat that I have. You guys got great questions. And the pallid bat is really pretty different from our other bats for several reasons.
Before you start, I have, how do bats communicate? I presume that means communicate with each other.
Yeah, so they
And
can.
why do they like caves?
They communicate by clicks, squeaks, and buzzes. They also communicate with odor. And so I can't tell the difference in their smells, but they can tell. They can tell their relatives by smelling each other. And they do have a whole communication system. Scientists have studied that. And they use the same kinds of phrases when they're taking care of their babies or different phrases if they're looking for a mate and different phrases if they're mad at their friend or whatever. Look at these bats' ears. They're huge, right? Pallid bats have huge ears and they hunt on the ground and they're looking for things like this potato bug. This is a toy, but this is what a potato bug or a Jerusalem cricket looks like. And they'll fly down and they'll fly low and they'll even land on the ground and then jump on the insect. They also eat grasshoppers and they can eat scorpions. So they're pretty amazing. These guys are just tough little bats. Actually, they're kind of big. Can you move along here? She's going to just sit there, isn't she? And they like to live in various places, but it's kind of cool. They seem to like the vineyards. And so they're doing pretty well in Sonoma and Napa County. But unfortunately, in a lot of California, they aren't doing so well because they've lost a lot of their habitat. And that's been really hard on bats. The other thing that's really hard on them is when farmers use insecticides, the poisons that kill the insects, right? She is not really eating this mealworm. She's just sort of sitting there. Now, I'm always hoping that people will help bats. It is still alive. That's kind of gross, huh? Maybe I should make that stop. There we go. I'm always hoping that people will help bats. And one of the best ways you can help bats is to teach other people about why bats are good, why they're important, and that they're not scary animals trying to hurt us. They don't come after us. If they fly near us, it's because there's an insect that's flying near us. I give her mealworms just like the others, and she'll crawl in the bowl and eat them. Pallid bats are because they eat on the ground, they have a really easy time learning to eat from a bowl. Okay? So I am hoping that you will help bats by teaching other people about why they're good. I think we're about out of time. I know there were some other questions. If you want to email them to me, my website again is norcalbats.org. And you are welcome to send me an email from there if you wanted to do that. So there it is. All right. Thanks for joining us today and spending your time learning about science.
Thank you, Corky.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.